Recording in progress.
For the many of you that are here today for our Weber County Commission meeting, we welcome you. We're glad you've chosen to be here today. We've got our friends, many of our friends here, and we're so happy that, including those from KUER radio here today, and thank you for joining us. For those of you online, we welcome you, and those of you who may join us at another time. Today's commission meeting is for this Tuesday, the 30th of July. Present today is Commissioner Sharon Bolos, seated to my right, Commissioner Gage Froer, seated to my left. We're glad you're here. Our agenda will proceed as follows. Our Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be given by the always happy Christy Bingham. And then our invocation will be given by Commissioner Bolos. I'll have the thought of the day, and we'll go to that point. Ms. Bingham?
Everyone, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee this time, grateful for the opportunity that we have to convene as a community and as a county commission. We're grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy that allow us to do so. We're grateful for the many blessings that was given to us, for the wonderful community in which we live, and we're grateful for those who serve it. We ask Thee to bless our employees and their families. We're thankful for all that they do in our behalf. We're thankful for those who serve as first responders and in our military. We ask that would watch over them and protect them and bless them and their families. We pray for Thy Spirit to guide us in the things that we do this day, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Commissioners, today's thought is a little, reminiscent, so to speak, for me. Life changes many times every time the sun comes up. Whether it's from a phone call or from a change out your back window, things change in life. A couple of weeks ago, in fact, it was 2 weeks ago, Monday, I got a call in the morning that my next door neighbor had passed away. He was 92 years old. Robert Anson Call. We called him Bobby. A lot of people called him Bud. He was a wonderful graduate of Ogden High School back in 1940. And was on their boxing team back then when they had boxing sport team back then. But he played golf, he was an assistant pro at the country club, taught swimming, served our country in the U.S. Navy, just an all-around good guy. But what I remember him for, other than he was a phenomenal husband, always tried to make his wife happy, unless they were playing cards, and then he got a little gruff, which he needed to be scolded for. And you only get gruff or need to be scolded when you lose, which he did a lot to her. But I would look forward to summers where I could go across our lawn and would sit down underneath a tree and just talk and giggle about old times. When that call came in, it was sad for me. The best neighbor I'd ever had. He'd often show up on Sunday with a hot plate of rolls that his wife had just cooked. Or he'd come over and help me with attending to my kids or whatever was needed in an emergency or what we would call a crisis. Just a perfect example of a guy, and many times was happy. That's my point. Today, and in just a few moments, we're going to recognize people who make other people happy because of the jobs they do. They're not content with being mediocre. And to them and the rest who work for Weber County, you make this a great place. And you make those who work around you happy. We appreciate it. My plea to those of you who are in the audience, those of you who are getting these awards, and those of you who are supporting those others, is don't leave it all at the workplace. Don't go home with your leftovers. Go home with your best stuff. Because you have neighbors, and especially those within the walls of your home, that love you and are looking to be their cups to be filled. And that's my thought for today, Commissioners.
Like it.
We'll move on now. We have an item later in the agenda regarding a development agreement. That development agreement in and amongst itself will have opportunity for public comment. So if you have public comment regarding that, you can hold and wait. But if you have public comment regarding anything else related to the agenda, we'll hear that now. We'd like you to limit your public comments to those items on the agenda, limit it to 3 minutes. Is there any in person that would like to comment on our commission agenda today? Seeing none, is there any online, Christy? None online? Commissioners, really looking forward to this next piece. I'm going to turn the time over to Commissioner Sharon Bolos for the Winning and Weber Awards. Commissioner?
I think we have a video. Do we have a video to play? Okay.
July is Winning in Weber Month, and we would like to celebrate a few of our outstanding employees who have made a great impact here at Weber County. The Rising Star Award goes to Tammy Adelot. Tammy is a planner for the Weber County Planning Division. She is always up for a challenge and is always willing to help others, demonstrating impressive leadership and stewardship. The Service Star Award goes to Debbie Christensen. Debbie is a business office manager for the Recorder Surveyor Office. She thinks outside of the box and goes above and beyond to assist the public and support her employees. The Leadership Award goes to Rick Grover. Rick is the Weber County Planning Director. He is kind, understanding, and works hard to help everyone feel heard and appreciated for their contributions. The Learning is Power Award goes to Dimitri Garcia. Dimitri is an operator at the transfer station. He accepts new challenges without hesitation and is always willing to look out for his coworkers. Congratulations to this year's recipients.
Thank you for playing that. Thank you, Commissioner Harvey, for the opportunity. A little adjustment. Last year, you'll remember, we presented these awards and we were recognizing women in business. And when we discussed this this year's go-around, we decided that it would be appropriate to open this up to all of our employees. We have so many amazing employees in Weber County, and we received a lot of nominations, pages to go through, and a lot of really good comments about people and from their coworkers. And it was a difficult decision, but as you can see by the video that Ms. Clark put together, we've chosen some of the best. And I'm glad to see so many in the audience today for the presentation of these awards. She took the narrative for that video from the nominations, but there are a couple things that I'll add. One of the things about Tammy Adelot is that she's continually taking on more and more challenging things, and happy to do that. One of the comments from the nomination for Debbie Christensen said, "If you have a front counter, you want her to run it. Simple as that." One of the comments from Rick Grover and his nomination was, he missed his real calling in life, an ambassador. And one of the additional comments for Dimitri was that he's expressed that he wants to do it all. And I think those comments and others, and some of these had more than one nomination. So it just goes to show you that we have great people here in Weber County, and we have awards for these people.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Frohr, I know you're a sentimental guy at times. What do you have you'd like to contribute to that?
Well, you know, this is very impressive, and going through the nomination list that Commissioner Bolo sent over, I mean, you could see that there was a number of people that are well deserving of these awards. It was very difficult to really come up with the shining stars, but these four individuals obviously really exemplify what we do here and what the employees of Weber County do to provide the best of service to the citizens of Weber County. And this, again, it's my honor to recognize these people. But let's not forget about the people that work every day to help the citizens of Weber County that aren't here, because they're just as important as these people. But it's great to give recognition to this great group from planning, survey recorder, and obviously the transfer station, all become critical functions of this county. We could not do this job without the fine people that help us here in the county.
Thank you, Commissioners. Well, what I'd like to do is, with your permission, is go down and present these awards in person and have Jessica, if you wouldn't mind, Christy, if you wouldn't mind taking some pictures, and then we'll give, if you would like, to all of you, would like to give you just a moment right there at the lectern to accept the award, you know, like it maybe say a little something of acceptance. That would be appropriate. So let's do that now. Commissioner Volos, I'll have you lead.
July is winning in
Tammy's our rising star in Weber County. One, two, three.
I'm going to kind of toot Rick's horn up here, actually. I know that I put in a nomination for Rick as a leader. He's a great department head that is always very encouraging and positive and helps his employees to improve and grow and allows them opportunities to kind of move forward. So I'll thank Rick for that.
Hey, Debbie Christensen, Service Star. One, two, three.
No, it'll be short. I'm actually surprised I got this. I think it's awesome, though. But everybody that I work with, Leanne, Bahi, everybody in my office, I'm grateful that I have a good job and good people to work with. So, and way to go, everybody else.
Our Leadership Award, Rick Rober.
One, two, three. Okay.
Learning is powerful. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine. I would love to go sit down. No way. You know, my staff is incredible. I love baseball, and the pitching. If you have a good pitching crew, and that's what matters. And I look at my staff, and they're incredible pitchers. They're always out there, and they're trying to improve themselves. And Tammy, I was thinking she wasn't even down here. I thought she was running behind because she was working on a JDC report, trying to get everything ready for this meeting. But she made it. So anyway, I'd like to thank my staff. They're amazing.
Okay, Learning is Power Award, Dimitri Garcia.
One, two, three.
I want to thank Weber County for our Weber County Transfer Centers for always being like family and always supporting me through all the trials and tribulations, and Bill and Sean for believing in me too, and just thanking all you guys for the opportunity. Thank you.
Can all 4 of you recipients please come back up for one last picture? Thank you.
In there. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Don't you love how in all of their comments, they talked about their coworkers? Just how we work in Weber County. You don't do it without a team.
You know, and that's, I'm warmed to see you folks back there. Because I know you guys put up with a lot, and I'm grateful. And to Debbie and the rest of you, and all of you have sometimes, they're a little challenging, but boy, we sure are grateful for you. Thank you for your leadership, and especially I'm going to go to Sean and Bill too. Many of these folks come out of your department. That is a result of your leadership, and we have the best community service team in the whole land, or the whole state. You guys, you two gentlemen should be very proud of the teamwork you've created, the team building you've created for Weber County. I know we're really proud of you. We're grateful that you've sacrificed some of those professional licenses to come and work for Weber County, and you do a wonderful job. We're grateful to you. Thank you so much. Can you give one last round of applause for Bill and Sean? Okay, commissioners, if there's no other comments, then we would love all of you to stay. This is probably one of the more exciting meetings that you'll ever attend. But if you need to go somewhere else, we'll only be here another 90 minutes, or maybe shorter. We'll see. But we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which are the consent items. Item 1 is a request for approval of warrants 102-574 through and including 102-677, and 485-571 through and including 485-775 in the amount of $3,189,222.66. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $815,125.41. And item 3 is the summary of warrants and purchase orders. We have our great Ricky Hatch here to explain some of those. Ricky, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We issued 9 purchase orders this week for $815,000. 98% of that amount, or $802,000, is for the conference center to purchase furniture. As far as checks, we issued 309 warrants this week for $3.2 million. 29% of that amount, or $940,000, related to the conference center remodel. 15%, or $489,000, were American Rescue Plan Act funds that were sent to Powder Mountain Water and Sewer. 9%, or $297,000, was for the Roads Department for the Highway 162 mill and overlay. We had 2 items at 8%, or about $265,000. One was the housing payments on behalf of Weber Housing Authority, and the other was for our IT department to purchase software licenses. And lastly, we had 6% of that amount, or $183,000, was for the county fair to pay for entertainment.
There you go. The county fair, by the way, always ends the second Saturday in August. This year, it's the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. We look forward to seeing you out there. Commissioners, questions, item on consent 1, 2, or 3 to 1?
No, not for me.
Hearing none, I'll move on to item 4, which is a request for the approval of the minutes for the meeting held on July 9th and July 23rd, 2024. Item 5 is a request for approval of an agreement by and between Weber County and Lane Manzano in the capacity of consultant spot operator for the publication of AIDA, which, by the way, is still going on. What a fantastic performance. Great voices, the sound, the lighting, the atmosphere. Holy cow. If you don't get to see it in this next couple of weeks, you may have another opportunity, something of this quality in your next lifetime, but you may want to make a point of it. Item number 6 is a request for approval of a release of a lien by and between Weber County and Patsy Ann Lucero for road improvements. And item 7 is a request for approval of a business license. Commissioner Bolos, Commissioner Frohr, any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve consent items G1 through 7.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thanks. Item H, as our action items, it's a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and the State of Utah Department of Health and Human Services to expand the Weber County Public Defender Group Forensic Social Work Office to provide services to Box Elder, Davis, Morgan, and Weber counties. We have our director, Jim Ritalik. Jim, would you like to make that presentation? You've also brought Dr. Lancaster with you. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I did bring Daniel with us because it's really in his bailiwick, and so he'll have more to say about it. But we're very excited to start this program. We're excited that we received this funding for this 2-year pilot program from the legislature.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I do want to start by just acknowledging and thanking all of you for the early investment in my division, in my existence, and that of my social workers. This money coming from DHHS is a result of combined efforts and the fact that crime obviously doesn't stop at county borders, right? And I think this gives us a great opportunity to utilize the evidence-based practices that we're engaging to try and reduce crime, reduce recidivism, not just in Weber County, because it's not like they're not going to come in from other counties or go to other counties. So we will be able to contract with the public defender offices in Box Elder and Davis counties, continue our work here in Weber and Morgan, get people connected to treatments, and try and help minimize the things that will increase likelihood of future crime. Anyway, questions, thoughts?
Commissioner Frohr, being in your portfolio, I'll give you the opportunity to speak first, if you'd like.
Thank you. Yeah, Daniel, Jim, thank you very much for this. We knew this was an ongoing effort. We worked very diligently down at the legislature. It wasn't a great year for funding, but this really rose to the top with a lot of the legislators that we talked to and able to get this funded through executive appropriation. I believe it was $300,000. What was the total over 2 years?
Over the course of 2 years, $850.
$850. Okay. So, and really, this, I think Daniel hit it on the head. We would like to think that crime stops at the borders, the cities, the counties, but it doesn't. And this gives us an opportunity to, especially Jim and his team, to work with our surrounding counties that don't have the resources, don't have the public defenders group like we have in Weber County, again, the shining star to help our surrounding counties. And I look forward to the success. And being a 2-year pilot, I expect that in 2 years this will be expanded, and hopefully other counties across the state will see the significance of this and be able to receive some funding from the state of Utah. So great work. Look forward to the results.
I'm sorry, I would be remiss if I did not add our great thanks to Representative Matt Gwynn for sponsoring us and pushing us through, and the Dr. Ward, who works with DHHS and was very supportive of this, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Frohr. Commissioner Bolos, any comments or questions?
No.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the contract by and between Weber County and the State of Utah Department of Health and Human Services to expand the Weber County Public Defender Group Forensic School Social Work Office to provide services to Box Elder, Davis, Morgan, and Weber counties, as presented by Mr. Ritalik and Dr. Lancaster this morning.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before I place that motion for vote, You know, for those of you who might watch this in weeks or months or years to come, we're right in the middle of the Summer Olympics. It never gets tiring of people winning the gold medal. They're usually very happy when they've won the gold medal. Here we are, leading out again. Gold medal time, although we won't get any kind of a ribbon or medal around our neck, but that's exactly what this is doing. Time and time again, and it's just evidence of the presentation made earlier today by all those Winning in Weber awards, and again here, Daniel, that this is just a fantastic thing. So appreciate your work. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 2 is a request for approval of a contract amendment by and between Weber County and the State of Utah Attorney General's Office to add this fiscal year's funding from the state to the budget for the WMCJC. Tricia Whiteley.
Good morning.
Hi, Tricia.
So this is pretty much just straightforward what it says in the description. The way that our primary funding source from the State of Utah Attorney General's Office is allocated is they do a 5-year contract, but they only put the money into it 1 year at a time. So that's why we have to do an amendment every year, is because this year they've given us approximately $540,000 to fund the operations of the Children's Justice Center for this year. So,
Great. I
if
know.
you have any questions?
I know Commissioner Bulloss sits on that board currently.
Yes, she
Any
does.
questions?
No, I just want to comment, thank you so much for the work that you do. I know this contract is just about the money, but the work that goes on there is so important, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Faur, questions?
None for me, thanks.
If no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the contract amendment by and between Weber County and the State of Utah Attorney General's Office to add this fiscal year's funding from the state to the budget for the Weber Morgan's Children's Justice Center.
Second. Motion and a second. I'll place that for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 3, Mr. Park, if you'll make your way here, it's a request for approval of an agreement by and between Weber County and Jefferson Solutions to provide an actuarial valuation.
Actuarial valuation.
Well, you know, hooked on phonics valuation for the county and dispatch OPED plans as required for the GASB 75.
This is an amazing accounting contract with all
It's
these
an
terms.
amazing word. I can see it now, but it's good before. Thank you.
We are required every other year to have a licensed actuary review our other post-employment benefit plans. Now, what this is the 5 years of insurance that we promised employees when they retire if they meet certain conditions. So we have to have an actuary come out, look at that plan, do a valuation, and tell us what the liability is for that plan. Now, we're currently in a phase-out of that plan. By the end of 2026, anybody who is retired before 2026 who qualified, they'll be the last ones who can retire under this window, this program that we offered. But we're still required to have this actuarial evaluation until the program is done, which would be 5 years after that last person retires. And so this is just a contract to continue having an actuary provide this service for the next, we have this contract will go for 4 years. We only have to do it every other year, so we anticipate using this vendor twice, and then we'll come back and reassess at that time if we want a new one or whether we'll continue with this existing one.
Very good. Commissioners, questions?
None for me.
No.
And I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the agreement by and between Weber County and Jefferson Solutions to provide an actuarial evaluation of the county and dispatches OPEB plans as required in GASB 75.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll place that for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4, Mr. Waite, come on forward. It's a request for approval of an agreement by and between Weber County and Arrowleaf Subdivision for stormwater maintenance to ensure that the on-site stormwater detention facilities are maintained and inspected. Mr. Tucker Waite.
So a little background. So this is a subdivision up in the valley. It has private roads, kind of goes up the hill, the mountain a little bit. And we have this maintenance agreement. It's kind of brought on by the state, kind of makes us do this. But all it does is it ensures that the stormwater facility is being maintained. and inspected. So this gives us a right to go on there and look at those if they're not doing it. And if they're not doing that stuff, then we can send them, send them a bill afterwards for the maintenance and the inspection. So that's all this is, just make sure stuff is clean and working properly.
Very good. Commissioner Frohr, this is in your portfolio. Any comments or questions?
Just, again, thanks to engineering, Gary Tucker. Stormwater is a big deal, and until it gets here, sometimes people don't realize how important it is. But this is just another example of working with our private sector to make sure that we maintain those so that when we do have those 50, 100-year storms, that we're protecting the public and property. So with that, I'd be happy to make a motion whenever you're ready.
No comments or questions? Then I'll entertain that motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve the agreement by and between Weber County and Arrow Leaf subdivision for stormwater maintenance to ensure that the on-site stormwater detention facilities are maintained and inspected as presented by Mr. Tucker Waite this morning.
We have a motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker. Appreciate it. Well, Commissioners, now is the time. Item number I on our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public meeting to convene a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Just for decorum, Mr. Crockett, when you go into a public hearing, is that a roll call vote or?
Honestly, there's really no answer. It's for the record, it's fine to do a roll call vote when you do that. So.
Yeah, but it's fine not to as well, right?
Correct.
Right. Right. Thanks. Great. Ms. Adelot, welcome back. In a moment here, we'd like this is a public hearing to amend the executed development agreement for JDC Ranch project to include an additional 275 residential units with the JDC Ranch development. Tammy Adelot.
Thank you, Commissioners. This will be a fairly short presentation, actually. We received an application June 25th to amend a development agreement that was recorded back in 2022 for JDC Ranch development. They went through a rezoning process, and at this time they're looking to amend the development agreement, not change any of the zoning. Let me just go through some of these changes that they're proposing. The main one, I think, is that, sorry, let me fix this here. The main change is that they're looking to add an additional 275 dwelling units to their existing 725 units within this development. The developer is seeking to have each of these additional additional units to be labeled as attainable units. So 275 attainable units. The developer is here, and so I'm sure they'll have a few things that they want to say and address when I'm done with my presentation. We've talked about this in work session. Attainability is defined by the developer, and they may be pulling some information from the state as well, is capped at 400,000. So the developer is proposing 275 additional units with a cap on the base price of $400,000. These are starter homes. These are around 900 square feet. No garages, either no basement or no finished basement in these. What they're looking for is anything above and beyond what they've already been approved for would be considered attainable. So if the market dictates maybe 10 of these, then maybe their density is capped at 735 instead of 725, with an allowance of up to 1,000 units. I hope I'm explaining this okay. To ensure this attainability and that these are owner-occupied, a deed restriction has been proposed and would ensure that these are owner-occupied. First-time home buyers have a crack at these. What the county has proposed previously is in the developer's proposed pre-sale period that these be limited, that this pre-sale period be limited to a list of prioritized potential first-time home buyers. These could be emergency responders, teachers, those that work within Weber County, and I know that we've gone back and forth about that, and I believe the county commission has decided that they're not necessarily sure that they want to restrict this to those who work within Weber County. So I'll let you decide that, and at the end, you may decide to table this, or you may decide to make a decision. What staff has already given to you would be an outline of the Western Weaver Planning Commission's recommendation for approval. They've recommended approval with an additional condition that in one of their open spaces labeled as Christensen Park, that the restrooms actually be installed and maintained by the HOA. This is one of those public open spaces that will be maintained by their HOA for the time being, and the plan was not originally to install the restrooms at this time. It was just listed as an additional amenity, potentially in the future, depending upon the need, but the Western Weaver Planning Commission requested that that be installed as part of their recommendation for approval. So you've got a couple of choices here. I will state a couple of things. One is that there are a couple of things in their proposed development agreement amendment that we haven't quite ironed out, and one of those would be who is going to enforce the deed restriction. Does the county want to enforce this? The county, frankly, would prefer that the developer enforce this, whether it's through their HOA or however they'd like to do it. But I know the developer is requesting that the county do this. So we've talked with legal. I'm not sure if that's a precedent that the county wants to set with enforcing these. Again, that would be up to the commission to include that in their approval. The other thing that was included in their proposed amendment is an expedited process to get through the building permit approval process. This is something we haven't yet worked out with building inspection, and so we would request, frankly, that item be pulled from their amendment agreement proposal, because I think that's just going to slow down this moving forward and possibly getting approved. That is all I have for you today. Do you have any questions for me? Otherwise, the developer is here to answer any questions, and I believe they may have a presentation as well.
The developer would like to come forward and make the presentation now.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. Brian Bayless, 1372 South Main Street.
1372 South Main Street, Erie, Pennsylvania, to Ogden, Utah. Which Main Street?
That's a very good question.
There are a lot of main streets in this good old U.S.
He got kicked
Bountiful,
out.
Utah.
Okay, great.
Bountiful, Utah. All righty. Is there a video, Tammy? Sorry. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, if that's all right. We just had a quick, like a minute and a half, just kind of a quick summary to kind of start the conversation. Happy to be in front of you, commissioners. We're excited about this project. It's been a long 4 years in the making, and so yeah, we'd love to kind of start with that video. Steve Waldrop from the state housing czar, we affectionately refer to him as. I don't know his official title. It's very long and complicated. He couldn't be here, and so kind of we wanted to start with that clip. Share my screen on here.
Now tell me about the first home you bought. Tell me about where you first lived. What was that? Oftentimes, they'll get a tear. Now tell me about the first home you bought. Tell me about where you first lived. What was that like? And oftentimes, they'll get a tear in their eye because those are some of the happiest days. It was a small home, and they have so many great memories of that place. And it was okay that it was only 1,200 square feet or whatever the size of it was, that they didn't have everything that they ever wanted. This is good long term. Eventually, all of those people who buy these starter homes will buy a bigger home later. That the single greatest threat to the future prosperity of our state is the price of a home. The unaffordability of homes in our state. I want my kids to live here. And we know that most Utahns, that's what they want more than anything else. They want this to be a place where their kids and grandkids can live and have a great life like so many of us have had. One of the things that makes the United States of America so unique and so different is this idea of the American dream. And at the core of that American dream is the dream of home ownership. Generations before us understood that owning a home could change the trajectory of the life of a family. Ownership changes who we are and our investment in a community. To the good people of Utah, every single one of us needs to be involved in making this happen. I know every city is different. Every city is unique. This is something we all need to own. It's for all of us. These neighborhoods where they are starter homes for our kids and grandkids. I know you, every single one of us started in a place like this. This is the Utah way. We come together. We all put aside what could make us the most money or be the most beneficial for us, and we try to do the right thing for the right people. They who are willing to do this work. I hope you're wildly successful, and I hope we can make this happen.
All right. That was just kind of a brief clip, kind of showing the why behind where we're at, the why behind JDC Ranch, the why behind what we're proposing here in this application. Home ownership is a big problem right now in Utah, and I would say since probably 2015 or so, as housing prices continue to just skyrocket, it became an increasingly large or more significant problem, with very few of the folks coming out of, college, good paying jobs that can afford a home. And so I'm sure you've got kids, you probably have relatives if you don't have kids that are in that scenario, but it's something that's the state is facing, and I think it's becoming an increasingly big problem. And so these attainable homes, it's something that we're very, very excited about. And the concept essentially is that we would lock the pricing in. And again, I know you know some of these details as a result of reviewing your packets and the conversations in previous meetings that we've had in public meetings. But maybe for the residents, the idea is that the cost of building a home is very much dependent on the size of the lot and and the development. And so we're bringing a lot of infrastructure to this area for 725 units. We're asking that we be able to build another 275, and we lock the pricing of those homes at a lower price, fairly significantly lower than what we might otherwise be able to build those homes at. As a result of getting the additional units that we're asking for, we would lock that pricing in at a base price of $400,000 and below. So there would be a range below $400,000, and it would include, down to $330,000, $340,000, all the way up to, that $400,000 price range. And so that's the concept. That's it in a nutshell. Any additional unit above the 725 that were previously approved, they would be attainable homes. So they would fit that category. They would be single family. They would be detached homes. These are not attached homes. So they would be detached homes on small lots. And we feel like this is a great opportunity. As you heard the governor kind of talk about that, that was on December 5th, 2023 when he did that press conference, and it kind of announced his budget. And so ever since then, we've been going really, really hard on trying to figure this out. We feel very fortunate at Nelson Homes to be in a county that is forward thinking. They're not waiting for the state to come and set the rules to say, hey, we're going to, as you all know, but maybe some of the residents or some of the neighbors don't know, is the state right now is looking at this saying, if local municipalities, if the cities aren't willing to kind of be more aggressive on trying to solve this attainable problem, we as the state will. And we'll take those rights and responsibilities away from the cities and take them as the state. And that's not too far out. It's happened in other states, and it's been a conversation on Capitol Hill, and we're saying, wait a minute, we don't want that as the builder. You don't want that as the municipality who they'd be taking the rights from. We're saying we can do this better. And based on the leadership of Weber County, we're very hopeful that we can get approvals here today or sometime in the near future and get going on this project. So that's, in a nutshell, where things stand. There are a few nuances to this that are very important as you guys consider this. The one big nuance is there's a deed restriction. So I think a lot of folks, we included, we don't want this to turn into something that isn't going to be a wonderful community in about 3 years, 5 years. We've all seen that evolution in communities that we've been a part of or seen. We will be building in JDC Ranch for the next probably 10 years. And so it's critically important that we set the table right from the get-go. We don't want to come in after a few years and be creating our own problems by building something that we're not proud of. And so we're putting these attainable homes, we're calling them the attainable homes, they're the starter homes. We'll be putting these right at the entrance to the community to say we believe in this product, and it's very, very important for us. Another important component of quality is that we're going to integrate these homes, these starter homes throughout. So the price is going to be locked down, and they could be right next to homes that are just your typical traditional market rate home. And so those homes will be $500,000 plus, where our starter homes will be below $400,000. And you won't be able to see, you won't be able to tell the difference. One will be a little smaller, but it's just like all of the homes, the post-war era homes that we see up on the benches in Washington Terrace and some of these other places. So it's just small homes. We've returned to that concept. Some will have basements, some will not. Some will have garages, some will not. And so we're trying to do this very, very affordably. One of the key components, an additional key component of quality is just landscaping. And so all of the attainable, the starter homes will be landscaped. So we will be putting in front and rear yard landscaping. A couple of other components of quality, we've kind of talked about the integration. We've spent a great deal of time on the design and the architecture. That really matters in a community. There are a lot of developers that come in and can't make promises on what the community is actually going to look like or what the homes will look like because they're developers. They're not builders. We, fortunately, are both. And so when we make a commitment to you on what the quality of the homes will be, we're building them. So we're able to keep that commitment. So those are some of the components of quality. A couple of other things that I think really matters a lot, and it's on paper, it's in the MDA application, the amendment that we've talked about, is a deed restriction. So oftentimes right now in corporate America, companies are coming in and buying up big swaths of these more affordable homes and then turning them to rentals. And so the way that you prevent that is through a deed restriction. And so it's really, the difficulty is when you sell that first tranche, a big investor can come in and buy big blocks, and that's where they get their economies of scale. And our objective is to not do that, right? So it's the first sale that's the most important, because then after that, those economies of scale don't exist for a big corporation to come in and buy. And so our approach to that is to say we are putting a deed restriction on up to 10 years on all of the attainable homes. Not up to 10 years. It will be 10 years or longer on all of, that's our proposal. That's what we hope you will consider. And so we would be putting a deed restriction that says essentially, if you live in this house, you have to own this house. You can't buy this house and then rent it out to someone else. And so we will enforce that when we sell the home. And then the enforcement of that going forward, our commitment, as we heard from some of the residents in the public conversation with the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago, and based on conversations that we've had with you all, that's an important topic for us. And so one of the commitments that we're making is that deed restriction, we will at any time, the county will come to us with every year, we can do it as much as a year, you would come to us as the county and say, hey, we want to audit this. And then we would go back and make sure that deed restriction is still in place. And so that's how we would propose we enforce that. So that has been drafted into the documents, the MDA that we have right now. And then we also have the ability in our HOA, we have the ability to provide, to give a violation to the residents that aren't following those rules. If we feel like there are renters in those homes, we can give a violation as the HOA and we can help enforce that. We kind of see it more as a partnership than it's you or it's us. And why I think that's important is because if you just gave that to the HOA, the concern that we have is that in 10 years when we are out of this community, the HOA can change the rules. They can come along in 10 years when we're out and we're not the declarant, and they can change those rules, and then that deed restriction goes away. And we do not want that to happen. So it can't be entirely the HOA. Hopefully that resonates with you all. I think it needs to be in favor of the county, but with the enforcement ability of the HOA. And so that's kind of, I think, how we've looked at this. And we've had a lot of conversations with Steve Waldrop at the state level, because they're dealing with these deed restrictions in a lot of places. And then we've also had conversations, because one of the biggest concerns that we have, and I might be getting too far into the details, but I'll just quickly try to give you a heads up to say that deed restriction for that person that's coming in and buying that home, that deed restriction could have an impact on the financing that they secure. And so that's our concern, is if the lender, if you're a lender, if you're the bank lending on that home, that $350,000 home, and you come along and you say, hey, what's this deed restriction? You're telling me that if I had to foreclose, I couldn't just go sell this to whomever I wanted. The concern is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and some of these big institutional buyers of the mortgages, they may say, we're not lending. And in fact, we did have a conversation with the lender that we do a lot of business with, and they've said that the VA, the Veteran Affairs folks, could have an issue with these deed restrictions. And so we're trying to be cautious. We haven't never done this before, and it hasn't really been done in the state before, just an actual deed restriction for homeowner occupancy. There have been other deed restrictions with regard to like income, certain income levels. If you have an income anyway, I don't want to get too far into those details, so I probably bored you already with some of that. We've spent a good deal of time looking at this, though, and it is kind of new, and we're trying to do our very best that we can to put something in place that ensures what you're interested in and what we're interested in, which is homeowners living in these homes. And we've wanted to do it in a clear and simple way, not make this overly complicated. This isn't income, there's not a lot of income verification, there's not a lot of other verification that needs to happen. Our objective is to build these homes and get residents in there. So that's really what we're after. Okay, with all of that said, we've talked about the deed restriction, we've talked about the enforcement, we've talked about a 10-year deed restriction is what we're asking for. Staff and others have, the Planning Commission has kind of talked about a longer deed restriction, so we'd love to get your feedback on that. We've talked about some bathrooms in the past. That those bathrooms will just raise the HOA fees, which kind of contradicts the affordability component that we're trying to hit here, or idea or concept that we're trying to hit. And so our hope would be that we're able to stub for those bathrooms in the future, and that if the county ever came along, or if one of the two cities came along and wanted to build those bathrooms, it would be much facilitated in having those stubs there, and those restrooms could be built. And again, the idea is, if you're living in the community, you're paying for that open space, and if you need to use the restroom at the pickleball courts or whatever, the playground, you're close enough within walking distance that you can head home and use the restroom. Versus if you're someone else and the public is these parks are available to the public, they can come, but they would have to leave and go to their own home, or in reality they'd probably use the tree if you're a little kid. So that's the concept, at least, is that we've tried to keep those HOA fees low, and we're concerned that by adding more and more things that those HOA fees are going to increase. I think that was kind of the summary of where we're at. The last thing, I want to mention one more thing, and then I'll shut up and sit down, or address any questions that you might have for me, is this idea that we are putting these deed restrictions in place for those that need it most, right? The first responders, teachers, the first-time home buyers, and I'm forgetting one. Military, active duty military. So those are the folks that we want to provide these homes for. We want to give them the preference. Now, there's a lot of legalities with how we market it and how we sell these homes. And where we've kind of landed is we would have a 2-week priority period where it's available to those folks first. We finish the home, we list it for sale, it's available for a period of 2 weeks, 14 days for those folks. They can come in and make an offer, and then we take the offer that works best and we move forward with that offer. Some of the challenges come when we try to prioritize. It just extends that acceptance period and the due diligence period, and we're hoping to just kind of be able to take in the offers, not have to worry about waiting the 14 days to see if somebody that comes in with a higher priority offer, then it just creates some complications with how we would manage that. And so our hope is that we can stick with that 14 days. If it's anybody that meets those criteria, first-time home buyer, teacher, first responder, or active duty military, if they meet those criteria, we would accept their application and move forward with that sale. So I think that's everything, and I would love to address any questions or concerns to the extent that I can that you might have.
Before we go to questions, I just want to make sure. So what I heard is that you are going to build what's called an attainable home, somewhere between $330,000 to $400,000 at the peak. It'll be a detached family home, 900 to 1,300 square feet, some with basements, some with not, some with carports, some with not, some with garages, some with not.
Correct.
You will have deed restrictions, so only those who plan to live in the home can buy the home. You're nodding your head, so I assume that's a yes.
Absolutely yes,
yeah,
100%.
Yeah, appreciate that. And then you'll give an introductory time so that first responders, like our teachers or nurses or police or fire or anyone that works that type of a thing, people living in Weber County would have an opportunity to get some of these homes first. All 275 will be attainable.
Every single one.
So going from what was planned for residences, all of these extra 275 would all be single-family detached homes with their own backyard, a place to put a fence or a dog or whatever, their own little plot of earth to grow some radishes and some rhubarb and whatever else. That'll be in there. It's a chance for them to have the American dream. That's what you're saying.
That's exactly right.
Okay, great. We're still in the public hearing portion of this. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Bayless, Commissioner Bolos, and then I'll go to you, Commissioner Frohr.
I don't have any questions.
Comments?
You want those now, or?
I think if you'd like to do it now, or we can wait until we leave the public, whatever.
I'll wait.
I'll wait, okay. Commissioner Frohr, this is in your portfolio.
It is, thank you. I'll wait for action.
Very good.
Discussion.
Thank you very much. Well, now, if there's no other comment, Ms. Adelot, is there anything else you'd like to summarize before we go to public comment?
Yes, actually. Can I touch on the townhome component of this?
Uh-huh.
Actually, I
Please do.
apologize.
That's important.
I didn't mention this before, and I feel like it needs to be in this meeting. So the developer, in trying to make space for these additional units, the developer has asked that they be allowed an increase in their number of townhomes within the development. Again, they're not asking for density beyond these 275 attainable, but for every certificate of occupancy that's issued for an attainable housing unit, they would ask that they could exchange an existing approval for a detached single-family dwelling to exchange it for an additional townhome. Did I explain that clearly?
You did, but there's a cap on that, I believe.
There is up to 100 additional townhomes. So this is a development that could maxed out, could have 1,000 total development units. 275 of those would be attainable homes. 200 of those could be townhomes, and the remainder would be detached single-family.
Or to say there's 100 now townhomes.
Correct.
This would be up to 100 more, and that's notwithstanding the already 200 doors that are meant for senior living or patio style.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's all that I have.
Great. Okay, thank you. Hearing from both commissioners that they'd like to hold. I'll now turn the time on our agenda to public comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and limit your comments to this particular issue. Are there any people in the audience that would like to comment regarding the JDC Ranch? Now would be your time to come forward. Are there any people online that would like to comment? Great. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene a public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Before we take action on this public hearing, Commissioner Bolos, comments or questions?
Couple of comments. I appreciate the work that Nilsen Homes has done on this, and Mr. Bayless touched on a lot of the things that are important to me. Attainability is what this is all about, and I think it's a great move forward. As he mentioned, the legislature is really having ongoing conversations about regulating what's being built in cities and unincorporated areas of our county, because sometimes it's difficult to do the right thing on your own, and we don't want to find ourselves in that boat. I appreciated the video clip. That press conference was done in West Haven at a development called Green Farm. It's very similar to this, and when it came to the city, I was serving there as the mayor at the time, and I was really proud of the city council members who supported that. It was unprecedented. We lived in a community where everything was an acre, essentially, and some smaller, and by smaller I mean third acre lots, and to see something similar to JDC Ranch be proposed in West Haven was a difficult decision. And some of those council members lost their jobs over it, but it was the right thing to do.
Mayor did too. Sorry.
It was the right thing to do. And
genuinely.
And I just recently attended a ribbon cutting for one of the public amenities there. And while this was very controversial when it came through West Haven, everyone who lives there now and everyone who attended that is astounded by the product that's there. Astounded by the ability that people have to get into a home and to own something. And start out the way that I did, the way that you did, and you did, which is not always the case right now. I have kids in this age group who don't have the opportunity right now, and I think it's great that we're considering something that will change the lives of our kids and grandkids. We received a text message from Steve Waldrop. His name was mentioned. He wished he could be here, but he's has spotty cell service. So I'm just going to read part of that. He expresses his gratitude for our consideration of this project, and then he ends with, it will create over $110 million in generational wealth for Weber County families. That's my kids and my grandkids. So I really appreciate this. And I know that Nielsen Homes is taking a risk here. It's not something that Nielsen's done in the past. And they're willing to come with this proposal to help us try to do the right thing for our kids. As far as the restrooms go, my only ask is that it would be stubbed. I know that some of the planning commissioners requested that there be restrooms installed there. If they're stubbed for the future, I'm okay with that. It gives the ability for those who are members of the HOA to decide if they want those. And if it ends up in one of the cities or the other, then they'd have that opportunity. But knowing that it would increase the fees, I mean, I think the ability to do that is okay with me. The deed restriction, the proposal is 10 years. I think we heard maybe from Steve Waldrop that the state was asking for a 5-year deed restriction. I'm okay with a 10-year deed restriction. I think that covers what we're trying to accomplish here by keeping large corporations out of the picture. Tammy, just verify there's a 1-for-1 trade on the townhomes, correct? For every, if this product doesn't sell, then, and they've built 10 attainable homes and they're not selling, then they would only have added 10 additional townhomes.
Correct.
Okay. Another thing that I want to add that I appreciate is that the attainable homes are mixed in with the neighborhood. When I first heard this proposal, I was really afraid that they were going to show me a map that said, here's the attainable section, right, this side of the tracks, and then here's the other side of the tracks. So I appreciate that. I think it does a lot for a community for those homes to be mixed in. I think that's it, although I may have more if you trigger anything.
Thank you. Commissioner Frohr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. You know, home ownership's a big deal. And home ownership is something that's been in my life for over the last 50 years. In fact, that's how I managed to feed my family and raise my kids, because of home ownership. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of home ownership for future generations. 50 years ago, it was very possible for young families starting out, getting out of college, to go out in western Weber County or one of our cities and purchase what we then called a starter home. And I remember a lot of those starter homes that I personally sold were under $35,000, if you can believe. This is, and you were probably before grade school. But that's a fact. And we can verify that. You know, Mr. Ostermiller can pull back the stats and show that I'm telling the truth here. But that was affordable. If you look at today's market, I don't think you can in any way or form say that 400 or 450,000 is affordable. So we have to get to that point, especially for our community, the state of Utah, that we depend on our families, our kids and grandkids. And if we look at that for future generations, how do we best contribute to future generations? It's called wealth. And how do you build wealth? There's no question, if you look through any financial information that's available out there, home ownership, real estate is the path to wealth. It gives you occupancy, it puts a roof over your head, and at the same time it builds wealth. So how do we do that in today's market? I would, congratulate Nielsen's Home for taking this on. From a developer's point of view, it's fairly risky in my opinion. I'm not sure a lot of developers would take this task on, because it's so easy to go out and build $450,000, $550,000 homes and sell them the next day. So they're stepping out on a thin ledge, in my opinion, and I wish them the best of luck with that, and I'm hoping they're successful. I want to address the deed restriction. So I'm also in agreement with Commissioner Bolos. I think the 10-year deed restriction is probably sufficient. I get concerned, but I'm not convinced that Weber County should play a part in that. I think that the HOA, the developer, needs to take. I've had various discussions with planning, and I think the best path forward for the deed restriction is to require annual or semi-annual reports back to Weber County Commission or planning to see if that's installed. But to me, from a private sector, that just complicates it. I look at how that affects the transaction from a real estate standpoint, and I don't think that's a component that lends itself to a fair transaction. They're going to have enough issues dealing with Freddie and Fannie on this, let alone having to deal back with the county. So I would say that they need to come up with a solution that maybe puts the county as a overseer, but I don't think it's fair to saddle that. We're not set up to do that. We're just not set up to handle. That's an enforcement action. I don't think we're going to add an additional person in planning to deal with that. Restrooms, I agree. I think they get stubbed in. I don't think it's fair to the HOA to put that additional burden. And again, if we're talking attainable, HOA fees become an additional fee that goes on top of their house payment. So if we're trying to reduce cost of housing, then we should reduce the cost of HOA whenever possible. And I'm going to rely upon Nelson Homes and Brian to make sure that happens. You know, last week I was able to tour a community in Louisville, Kentucky, just outside Louisville. The average size lot for Norton's Common, which had about 600 acres and now has 6,000 residents, a combination of mixed-use commercial. The average lot size was right around 5,000 to 8,000 square feet, 5-yard setbacks, and
what? How big?
Or excuse me, 5 feet. Thank you. 5 feet. And there was a mix going down that street that you could have a fourplex next to a single-family residence. There was no such thing as trying to segregate residential single-family from multifamily, and looking at it, you couldn't tell the difference. So I think that makes a plea for, look, let's look at what makes sense for the public, where they want to be. Let the public make the choice. Let's keep government out of dictating what sometimes these subdivisions should look like. And let the developer, let the private sector make that determination. They're the ones best suited to make that decisions, commissioners. I'm not sure we are. And again, I applaud Nelson Homes for taking this on. I think there's still some questions in my mind, but overall I'm in favor of this project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner. A couple of comments on my own. And this is where staff, I'm going to ask you to, Tammy, to kind of not just maybe take some notes here for meeting here. So first off, once sitting here 7 years ago, we started with what was called a master plan. We started trying to develop a new master plan because everything in unincorporated Weber County was zoned at 1 acre lots. Really tough to lay electricity, water lines, both culinary and secondary, sewer, fiber, all that. If you've got that much frontage for a 1 acre lot, is incredibly expensive. And as we started looking at a master plan, someone told me to go to Green Farm. I realized that in West Haven, a lot of what had been built out there were acre lots, and we were just starting to see some 3rd acre lots out there. But some of you took a chance out there. What I found interesting out there was it was a nice planned community. But what was even more interesting, after choosing to attend the ribbon cutting for the cultural hall that was built, it's a cultural hall of some form that was built out there, I had a dozen, maybe 18 people come up to me. And look, I've been working in the building industry for 36 years now. Half of those tell me how bad they hate their building at the end of a project. The other half say, oh, it's okay, and this, that, and the other. I had a dozen to a dozen and a half people come up and say how much they loved where they lived. That was absolutely different than what I remembered over my last 36 years in this industry. I was flabbergasted. It was just absolutely amazing. So, Commissioner, good for you. You took a challenge, and I'm sure glad you're here. Thank you. So that's what I went to summarize with my point when I interrupted you, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but it was great. It's a great project, and thanks to Corey Green, the former mayor of Hooper, and his family for helping facilitate that initial land transfer of that big, huge parcel of ground out in West Haven. It's a great place for a lot of people to live, and they love it out there. The people who live there love it there. Some of the things in this for me, look, I wanted a longer deed restriction, but you both said 10. That looks like that's likely where we're going to end. And so I'd be 2-to-1 on that, and I'd rather not be at 2-to-1. Yeah, it's okay. But I would, if you're gonna do if you're gonna add more townhouses, as far as I'm concerned, I want those deed restricted, at least 1 or 2 years on the townhouses. So if they're gonna get a credit, so to speak, for these attainable homes, those new doors that are gonna be developed need a deed restriction on those townhouses. 1 to 2 years would be enough, but at least have some kind of a deed restriction when they're sold. I want to make sure that, and I think that we've checked already with legal, but an individual, if they bought a home and then they went to sell it, that the next individual couldn't remove that deed restriction. But that deed restriction for sure stays on there for the allotted time. Or a company, and the deed restriction couldn't be removed. I don't have a problem with either Nilsson Homes, and especially the HOA, to govern their own thing and make sure they're homeowner occupied. I don't know that government needs to be over that. In fact, I feel good about them handling them on their own. And normally when you have an HOA, those good ones will take care of their own. And so I don't think we need more government oversight or more expense. That'd just eventually end up costing not just that subdivision, but everybody in the county more, and that's not a good idea. So I'm okay with it being done there. Let's see. Marketing. Mr. Bayless, I have a question for you. Come on up.
Yes, sir.
You guys are not novices at marketing. How much money, when you build a subdivision, how much money do you spend in marketing when you introduce a new subdivision to an area?
It would depend on the size. I would say at Green Farm, we've been building there, I think, since about 2018-ish. I think the approval was given around 2017, and I think we've been building since about 2018, 2019. I would say over the course of that period of time, we've spent hundreds, if not, yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. How much, though, to start it out?
Just to get it going, we do we're pretty scrappy, and we've got good name recognition. I would say probably $20,000 to get the website up and running and things going.
Thank you. That's all the questions I've got there.
Yeah.
I would also like to see, if this is important to me, but I would also like to see $20,000 be spent out of Nilsson's pocket towards marketing to Weber County first responders, to the teachers, school teachers, so that those folks know, hey, look, we got a 2-week window to get in on a $330,000 to $400,000 home. I'd like the developer to do that. Now, obviously, this will create some big hype, as this has never been done anywhere else in any city or any county in the state of Utah. So I'd like them to have $20,000 in there. I appreciate net worth. And what that means for home ownership. I'm grateful that I've been able to buy a home in my lifetime. And I sure hope my kids and my grandkids and the grandkids of my grandkids are able to do it. And I don't see another way. But I grew up in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home with an unfinished basement and a 1-car carport. I'm glad that someone's taking a risk to do it again with all brand new stuff. My father paid a whopping $9,100 for that home in 1962, and his parents thought he was crazy for paying that much money. But it's all economy of scale, right? I don't know anywhere in the land you can go get a brand new detached home for $330,000 to $400,000. $400,000. And make sure that it's homeowner occupied, not built, not all bought up by a big developer who's going to rent them all out. Pride of ownership. I know when you have pride of ownership, school test scores are better. You have a better student in school, so that helps the teachers. I know you have less response by first responders, the police and the fire. It's just a better thing. As it relates to the improvements to the park, I'm okay with no bathrooms, but those stubs, I don't want to tear up a pickleball court in the future to have those stubs. You guys are really good at planning, and you know about where that building's going to be. I'd like those improvements to be within 10 feet of the anticipated building. So don't just stub them to the property line of the park, but stub them all the way over to where they're going to be in the future. So if those homeowners decide that they want to put a bathroom there so they can tinkle in the toilet instead of on the tree, that they can do so relatively inexpensively because that's the whole goal, right? So commissioners, that pretty much covers the notes that I've made in advance of this. It was really hard for me to get here. Because again, as I told the story about Green Farm, I was a 1 acre guy. I was a minimum 3rd acre lot guy. This has been a hard process over the last 7 years. But I'm also remembering Gaynard Harvey, who bought a house in 1961 or 62. And I want more people to be able to have home ownership. If there's anyone out there that doesn't want any of the future residents of Weber County to own their own home, then I'll stand up to them anytime. This gives a wonderful opportunity. I know, and I checked on my own, that a recent traffic study was done. That road's busy. I went out there again yesterday morning. It's hard to get across that road, and I know UDOT has done a recent traffic study, and it warrants a light. So that'll likely be coming. Growth's inevitable. So I want you to know that that's been done. There's been a lot of good due diligence done out there. Growth's inevitable, and I think this will be a smart growth and a smart way to go, and I'm grateful to make this hard decision on behalf of the future people who will be in Weber County, and I hope those future people all own their own homes. So that's what I have to say about that. Commissioner Bolos, you said first that you may have some more comments based on what was said.
I think you, too, have touched on that. You did mention, Commissioner Harvey, deed-restricted townhouses, and I just want to make sure that what you mean is those, and I'm okay with that, by the way, 2 years, I think is fine, but I just want to make sure that those, the only townhouses that would be deed-restricted would be those that are being built in exchange for attainable houses.
Thank you, that was my...
Not the original 100.
That's, yeah, that would be a bait and switch. I meant the new ones.
Okay.
You're right, we're on the same page.
I think that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Frohr, any other questions?
No, I think that's it.
Then I will entertain a motion, and I hope that motion includes some of those things that I passionately spoke about.
Hey, Jim,
Yep,
may I?
yep.
I just wanted to quickly respond to a couple of those things. I really liked Gage your comments about the HOA and the enforcement. I think it's the HOA or that deed restriction being in favor of the county doesn't give them the obligation to maintain or police it, but it does give them the opportunity. And I think more importantly, it doesn't allow that precludes the HOA from being able to change that down the road, which I think all of us want. And so our proposal is that the deed restriction is in favor of the county, but that it's enforced by the HOA.
Okay.
Mr. Crockett,
If
does
that
that
makes sense.
satisfy the law?
You know, out of respect for my colleague who has been the primary attorney on this, I'd ask Liam Keogh if he would come up and help address that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a question if I might.
Please.
So, Brian, explain that to me. When you say in favor of the county,
Yeah,
explain to me legally how that works. You're going to file a deed. The deed will have a deed restriction in it.
correct.
And so how do you bring the county into that, and how do you keep the county out of a potential lawsuit, enforcement, et cetera? That's what I get concerned about.
So it'll be great to hear Liam's explanation. From my understanding of it, though, Gage, is that the deed restriction, in order to be enforceable, has to be in favor of someone. And so if that deed restriction is in favor of the HOA, that allows then the HOA to change that down the road, which I don't think anybody wants. Jim spoke to that. We don't want that. We don't want the HOA feeling like they have discretion on the ability to change that. And so it being in favor of the county doesn't obligate the county to enforce it. It gives you the right to be able to do so. And hopefully, again, excited to hear about what Liam's thoughts are on that. But that's the solution that I think is pretty elegant. It allows the county to choose to enforce it or not. If you don't have the workforce, you don't deal with it. But then in the HOA right now, the developer, we are willing to participate in a verification process. So in other words, the enforcement component of that, Gage, comes back to the HOA, and we're willing to participate in a verification process where up to once per year, upon request, we will affirm to Weber County that the deed restrictions remain in place on the attainable starter home lots in JDC Ranch. And we've also added language to the CC&Rs which implicitly states that it is a violation to rent any home which is subject to any owner occupancy deed restriction. And then the county has the right but not the obligation, like we spoke about, to enforce that deed restriction. So again, that's the concept. That's the legal concept that we've run through our legal process. Maybe a little different than the last time we talked to Liam, so hopefully this isn't hitting you too cold on this, Liam. But we felt like that was a good solution that's kind of a middle ground. Again, if it's just in favor of the HOA, we have the ability to change that, and we don't want to. We don't want it changed down the road by the HOA, out of our control. So that's the thought there, Gage.
Okay,
So
and I'm okay with that as long as it doesn't put an undue burden on Weber County and start getting us into lawsuits that we now have to go into court, on 700 or 275 potential lawsuits. That's not our business. So I guess I would want to hear from legal exactly what that means for Weber County.
Well, and Commissioners, as Liam comes up, I mean, I'm going to see if I can stir things up and confuse everybody, but a few of my thoughts are, as if I'm following this correctly, the real ability to get someone into one of these obtainable homes is during that 2-week advertisement period. And then after that, I haven't read the language of the deed, and I could very well be wrong, but I don't really see an enforcement mechanism to allow someone to come in and require that resale of that home to another person who meets those income requirements or who prioritizes like's been requested. Usually you see in any type of a deed restriction, it's not just a fee simple that's conveyed to the individual. It's something that can automatically revert to another entity, or gives the right to have someone come in and enforce that. And if I'm understanding correctly, that means the county would have to be mindful and keep aware of every single home that's resold in that development for the next 10 years. But I very well could be wrong.
Well, that's my concern. So how I see this in my own mind, so if it's in favor of Weber County, let's say that now you have a property that's sold by one of our well-deserving realtors out there that sells that, not knowing or doesn't disclose the fact that that has a deed restriction.
Yeah.
We now get that home conveyed to a new party that may not have been in a category or, maybe an investment property.
Mhm.
And now we've got a lawsuit at that point in time from either the HOA or a neighbor, typically, could be one of 700 plus residents out there that now looks at this county as this is in favor of the county, so we get brought into the lawsuit. Now, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I need to have that understanding exactly what's going to be the end game
On
for
this.
Weber County.
Yeah.
I won't be here, but some other people will.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have them faced with, unknown
Lawsuits.
circumstances.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the comment. Before you go, Mr. Keel, why don't you come up, Liam, and give your opinion, please?
Yes. The deed restriction, as I understand it, Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, the deed restriction will be a deed restriction for homeowner-occupied homes. The priorities that we give to first responders, active duty military, the 2-week isn't a deed restriction. That is just a priority sale. Not going in on the deed, not going to be part of the deed restriction. So I think we've got two things we need to look at. First, the priority sale to active duty military, first responders, teachers. That's separate. That's a 2-week thing that's going on, that the developer will have an affidavit, excuse me, that a qualifying party will sign indicating that, yes, they're qualified. They sign the affidavit. They promise that they're a first responder, whatever. So there's that component of it. The deed restriction itself will address that this home needs to be homeowner occupied. If the county doesn't want to be involved, and I absolutely see why we wouldn't want to be involved in the enforcement mechanism or potential lawsuits to enforce that deed restriction, then that deed restriction should be placed solely in the HOA organization. And the deed restrictive language that gets recorded to that property can indicate that. You can say this is a deed, this deed restriction exists for a 10-year period of time and cannot be rescinded by the HOA. However, the HOA is the enforcement mechanism of it. And so we can remove ourselves, the county, from being associated with that deed restriction and just throw it back on the HOA if that's what you would prefer. And I absolutely see the reasoning for doing that. But yeah, so there are two different components there. One's the deed restriction is going to address just the homeowner occupied part of it.
That's a deed restriction. I'm not talking about priority. That's marketing.
Yes.
I'm talking about the restriction itself.
Okay, yep, so homeowner occupied.
Yeah.
Yep.
So does it, if the deed was in favor, the deed restriction was in favor of Weber County, does that open up the possibility of legal liability for Weber County?
It does.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
And what, Liam, what's
Hold on, Mr. Bayless, if you'd speak into the mic.
What's the legal impact? I guess it's in reverse, right? It's reciprocal. If it's not in favor of the county and it is in favor of the HOA then would be burdened with those legal, the defense, all of those costs. So it would just be, if it's not the counties, then it's the HOAs.
The HOA will be responsible, right, for all those costs, for lawsuit, for liability, for enforcement on the HOA.
That's great. That's the flip side. And then maybe to your question as well, if I could just address one component, Chris, that you mentioned. Right now, the county, from an assessor's perspective, they have to know whether it's occupied, homeowner occupied, or renter occupied. And so that's kind of, in my mind, it's something that the county is already managing and observing because they have to from the assessor's perspective. And so I felt like, again, I'm not asking for the county to take on liabilities or responsibilities that they're not. It's just an understanding between us both of who's ultimately going to be responsible for that. But that's kind of how we saw is that the county's already kind of monitoring that as a result of the tax assessments. And so we kind of felt like that would be something that the county would be willing to continue to pursue since it's already in their line of sight. It wouldn't require additional oversight like Gage is talking about. But again, if I'm wrong, I'd love to know that.
So am I understanding correctly and thank you, I was wrong with how my understanding of how the deed restriction went. It's just homeowner occupied. It would have, the home would be sold, and then if someone entered into a lease agreement or they transferred it over out of where they're not going to be the primary occupant, Weber County would then have to file a lawsuit and use county tax dollars to litigate that lawsuit for a development that's really not our own. I mean, the county's acquisition to these requests, if I'm correct, is just, it's the requirements they wanted to see in consideration of granting additional density that there is there. So I also agree with Liam. I don't understand why it would be the county's obligation or why we would want to get ourselves involved in that type of debate when we are not the entity that's really in the best position to monitor that.
Brian, let me correct you. So you're talking about the homeowner exemption. The county doesn't track the homeowner exemption, whether it's owner occupied or primary residence. If it's a lease property, rental property, it still qualifies for the homeowner exemption.
Okay.
So we don't track.
You don't look at that?
No, that's
Okay.
all we do. All the county does from an assessor standpoint, it's either owner occupied, it's not a second home.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So,
Okay, so then I guess coming full circle, and I appreciate the conversation, this has been good. I guess coming back full circle, it's really just, the one argument is the county is granting the additional homes and shouldn't be responsible for the enforcement, the flip side, and so the county deals with those costs in the event and to the extent that there are costs to bear, or the HOA bears those costs, which we've all talked about, not wanting to overburden the HOA with those additional costs. I think if Steve were here, I don't want to put words in Steve's mouth, but I think he feels like the state has got to, or not the state, sorry, the counties. Again, it's really easy for Steve to say the counties have to manage it because he's at the state level. But I think his opinion is if this isn't a large and successful HOA, let's say we approved some attainable homes in a small subdivision and it was just those attainable homes, that HOA may not be solvent like this one would be. And so I think he's looking longer term at those ramifications. Again, not our issue to deal with, but I think that's where Steve's coming from, is saying, I don't want it in the name of the HOA. Our HOAs are set up, as Green Farm is, very, very financially solvent, and we will be here for a long time. I guess our hope would be that we can maybe harken back to the conversation that we just had about the restrooms to say, is it really a risk? And if it is a risk, are we willing to burden just the JDC residents with that responsibility? Now, again, that's your decision to make. I think it's additional risk that we're averse to taking, but if it's something that is going to allow you to support this, then we will figure it out. We would figure it out. But hopefully, there's maybe some, that's, I guess, my only thoughts. So on that issue, I'll let it lie. And I'm ready to move to one or two others before you guys kind of make a motion or do what you're going to do. Is there any other discussion that we need to have on that specific?
No, I don't think so, but let's start wrapping things up if you'll make those last 2 points.
Yes. The $20,000 for the marketing to the target audience, Jim, I think we're planning to do that anyways, and we're happy to do that. So I think that's a great recommendation and suggestion for us to stay focused on it. And I guess in return, we would love your help to get this to the WACOG, members of WACOG. Like, this really needs to be something, as you're already excited about and talking about, that we get to everybody out there. We want these folks in these homes, so let's make that happen. Hopefully we can get away, though, from the prioritization and some of the complications that arise from that. Stubbing utilities to the bathroom, to the restrooms, we will absolutely put that in the MDA, in the amendment. And then, let's see, I think that was it. The only other thing...
And that would be the same thing, too, in your townhouses.
Yes, let's talk about that for just 1 second. That's the last piece. Is our hope would be, this is the language, we wrote down some language to talk about that 1-year deed restriction on the townhomes, Jim. Developer will put in place, this is the language that we would like, because we may decide to put a deed restriction on those first 100. And I don't think you're as concerned about where the deed restriction is as much as there is a deed restriction in place for the additional units we're getting. And so my hope would be that we have the ability that if we decide to, because there is funding that the state has made available through the legislation that was recently approved just this last year, where we could come in and voluntarily put a 5-year deed restriction on some of those townhomes and get funding from the state in order to build the improvements. Now, we have to pay it all back. It's a loan, but it's a favorable thing that we're trying to figure out how to work into JDC. So my hope is that the language would be something like this, that the developer will place an owner occupancy deed restriction for a period of at least 1 year on the number of townhomes in the development which exceeds 100. And that way it allows us to, if we want to focus on the first that we're building right, in the future, that we can do that. We don't have to wait for the last. We don't have to wait for those last 100 or whatever number that we end up building below the 100 cap, if that makes sense. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Bayless. Okay, I'll be, unless there's more discussion, Commissioner Frohr, Commissioner Bolos, I'll entertain a motion. Motion for action or I-5 on our agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Be happy to make a motion whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Fast ready, okay. Well, we'll try to make this quick then. How's that? All right, Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the executed development agreement for JDC Ranch project to include an additional 275 residential units within JDC Ranch development with the following amendments and clarifications that I'd look for any thing I miss when I go through these. The first thing that I want to address is the deed restriction, that be a 10-year minimum deed restriction, and that the county will not have any obligation, liabilities, i.e. that obligation for enforcement of that will not involve Weber County. That will be strictly the duty of the HOA and the developer to follow through on that. And I think you know why I would recommend that. I would include there that the restrooms will not be part of the anticipated project, but stub infrastructure within 10 feet of the future building will be. Okay, so the infrastructure, obviously water, sewer will be part of that. In addition, that $20,000 will be set aside for priority marketing for the designated groups that were talked about here earlier today. And that the discussion regarding the one-for-one and the anticipated possible funding from the state of Utah be included in that development agreement. So Nelson Homes has the ability to take advantage of those attainable housing funds from state of Utah.
But they will, some of them, half of them will be deed restriction.
Yeah, so, excuse me, thank you for that. So half of those will be deed restriction up to, or excuse me, a minimum of 2 years. You okay with that? That's for the townhomes.
Okay.
So the single-family homes would be 10-year. For the townhomes, it would be 2 years. Okay? What have I missed?
I've got a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. It's a roll call vote. So I'll place that motion. Janie?
You'll have to excuse me, I'm new at this, and
Welcome to your inaugural, welcome to your inaugural
Craig
sitting at
didn't
that
tell me
seat.
there was going to be a roll call vote
That's
because he was
okay.
supposed to make me a script.
Okay, so you just call it, just call him by name.
Okay, Commissioner Gage Frower,
Aye. Thank you for that.
Commissioner Sharon Bolus,
Aye.
and Commissioner Chair Jim Harvey.
Aye. Thank you. That's a unanimous decision. Congratulations. That's great. Feels good. Thank you. All right. Commissioner comments. Item I or item J on our agenda.
No more from me.
Looking forward to your fair next week.
I'll say,
know.
fair starts on Wednesday.
Be there, be square.
Great.
Thank you.
We appreciate the presence of Mike Ostermiller in the audience, though, too. We welcome you. Thank you for being here. And those of you who have put a lot of time. Rick, your group, and you're just a fantastic job. Please give our best. Tammy, you did a good job on your presentation, but to Charlie also. These are things that have not been done in the state. You know, most, again, like I said in the beginning, most things that aren't done are usually get a gold medal if they're successful, and we wish you great success out there. With that, I'll entertain a motion for item K.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.